Hey guys, today I'm teaming up with CuberSquad to make a video about some 3x3 tips for improving. The first topic I'm going to talk about is learning algs and finger tricks. I recently did a small challenge where I finished full OLL in one day by learning the last 7 algs, and I think I came up with a really good system for learning algs that really worked for me, so I wanted to share it. I would not recommend learning 7 algs in one day. 1 or 2 is probably the best. First, I took a solve cube and just did the alg over and over while looking at the algorithm. Then, when I kind of felt like I knew it, I tried to continue doing it without looking at the alg. Next, I set up a few cubes into the case I just learned, and I went down the line doing it just from memory. If I messed up one, I would start all over from the beginning. Once I completed that, I felt like I knew the alg, but I still made sure to review it. I set up a few cubes to review later that day and the next day. If you move on to learn another alg the same day, make sure you go back and review the first so you don't forget it once you've learned the second. Throughout the day, I try to review any algs I've learned a few times, and I'll also try to review a bit the next day. Reviewing is super important. It makes it a lot harder to remember the algs if you don't review them. Really anything that you're trying to memorize, not just algs, but just reviewing is just really important if you want to continue remembering it. Alright, so now I'm going to do a quick example. I decided that I'm going to learn this ZBLL alg, kind of just chose it randomly. So yeah, the first step is just doing the alg a bunch of times. Alright, so now I feel like I know it pretty well, so now I'm going to stop looking at the alg and just see if I can do it from memory. Alright, so I think I know the alg pretty well now. Just went through it a bunch of times without looking, so I think I know it. Alright, so I have 3 cubes set up to the case. Now I'm just going to try to go through and do them all. Alright, got them all right. Alright, so now I've set them back up, and basically just later today and tomorrow I'm just going to review them a few more times just so that I don't forget it. Alright, so that is how I learn algs. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you can go about it, but that's just what worked for me. And I really don't like learning algs, but sometimes it's necessary, so this is what I do. My recommendation for which algs you should learn would be to start off with full PLL. It's definitely the most important alg set that you should know for 3x3. Full OLL is not as important in my opinion. I was averaging sub 10 without it, but I think it's best to learn it by the time you're getting close to averaging sub 10 because I think it will help you to get sub 10. Also, I just want to add, when I'm learning algs, I usually just read them off a website, but if you want to learn better finger tricks and stuff like that, there's plenty of videos that could show you, and Speed Cube Shop actually made a new program recently that shows finger tricks, which is pretty cool, so I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to check it out.
Hey, VKM Passion from CuberSquad here. So without delaying any further, let's hop on to the next point. So this point is like a continuation to Livia's previous point. This point is mainly applicable for people averaging sub 10 or so. And this point is to learn algs beyond just OLL and PLL. By this I mean learn algs that can be more helpful than OLL and PLL. Take for example COLL or even ZBLL. So in ZBLL you get a PLL skip even though you can't call it a PLL skip, and there are lots and lots of algs for ZBLL alone. I think there are about more than 380 algs for just ZBLL, and in order for these algs to come in your solves, you must know at least quarter of them, so the chances of you getting are higher. So here's an example of a ZBLL. So when you get this OLL case where you have a headlights in the left and you have a bar here and a full color solve here and technically a J-perm, but then from this angle you do F and then you do a Y-perm and then you just do F prime. Some more things like these are 1LL, L, there is one look last layer or OLL CP, or you could even consider winter variation and summer variation or val class slot. And yeah, my suggestion for you guys is to start learning COLL first. It can be extremely beneficial. And with that, I conclude this point of mine.
The next thing I'm going to talk about is cross on bottom. I learned this way too late. It definitely takes some getting used to, but it is worth it because it will save you a rotation and it will make it a lot easier to transition into doing your first pair. My recommendation for practicing this would be to just take as much time as you need to plan out your cross on bottom, and eventually you'll get used to it and you'll be able to do it within the inspection time. Next, I'm going to talk about practicing, and I want to give some of my tips for practicing. I've talked about these before in my how to get sub 10 video, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check that out because it's a bit more in depth, but I'm just going to give a quick overview here. First, there's alg practice, which is super important if you're learning algs. I already talked about this earlier in this video, but just make sure you review so you don't forget them, especially if you're learning a lot of algs in a short amount of time. Next is slow or untimed solves. I really like doing slow solves. I think it helps with looking ahead a lot, so you just don't worry about time and go as slow as you need to completely eliminate pauses. As your look ahead improves, you'll find that your slow solve times will be getting faster. Metronome practice is another one I talked about in my sub 10 video. I don't really use it, but some people have found it helpful to practice look ahead. So it pretty much forces you to do slow solves and to look ahead because you want to keep in rhythm with the metronome. Basically, you just set up a metronome and then do one turn per click. And of course, the best way to practice, in my opinion, is just by doing solves. Sometimes I'll do an average of 100, sometimes I'll just do a bunch of averages of 5. Really doesn't matter, but just doing solves is super important. And for my final tip, I'm going to be talking about something pretty major, which I've actually been working on a bit recently. So if you want to hear that and the rest of the tips, check out part 2. Link is in description. Bye! Now let's see if I still know the alg. There we go.